Humans were not new to the galaxy. They had simply been forgotten. Commander Krikstaal stood silently on the command deck of his flagship, his sharp eyes fixed on the glowing blue sphere ahead. The planet slowly expanded across the viewing screen as his fleet drifted closer. It had taken several long cycles to reach this remote corner of space, but the journey appeared worth it. Initial scans showed a perfect balance of atmospheric gases, oxygen-rich, stable, and ideal for sustaining complex life. Even better, the electromagnetic signals detected from the surface were basic and unrefined. Primitive broadcasts, early-stage development. Krikstaal allowed himself a small, satisfied breath. Another young civilization. The Zephirian fleets had done this countless times before. They would arrive, initiate peaceful contact, and gradually introduce the species to the greater galactic order. It was a predictable pattern. The locals would be overwhelmed by advanced technology, grateful for guidance, and willingly accept protection under the Confederation. But something about this mission felt off. Far away, near the orbit of Jupiter, Captain Jake Morrison sat firmly in his chair aboard the USS Defiant. The mission had been routine, standard patrol, nothing unusual. Until the alarms began. A sharp tone echoed across the bridge. "Captain," Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez called out, her voice steady but tense. "We have 3 unidentified vessels entering the outer system." Jake leaned forward immediately. "Details?" "They're large, sir, at least twice our size. Configuration doesn't match anything in our database." A silence followed. This was it. For generations, humanity had wondered if they were alone. Now the answer was approaching them at high speed. "Send a priority signal to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them we're not alone anymore." On Earth, Admiral Paul Bennett received the transmission within minutes. He had spent his entire career preparing for this exact moment. Protocols were already in motion. "Patch me through to the Defiant," he said quickly. Jake's face appeared on the screen. "Admiral, they're holding distance. No signs of aggression so far." "Good," Bennett replied calmly. "Follow first contact procedures exactly. Dr. Lisa Grant is heading to Luna Base now. Maintain communication until she arrives." Back in orbit, the Zephirian fleet slowed its advance. Krikstaal studied the human vessel carefully. It was smaller than expected, yet something about its design unsettled him. The hull was sleek, almost deceptively simple. Weapon systems were hidden, but not invisible to a trained eye. This was not typical primitive engineering. "Transmit greeting sequence," he ordered. Moments later, a mathematical signal was sent, prime numbers followed by simple equations. A universal language, a test of intelligence. On the Defiant, Amy watched the data stream in. "It's mathematics, Captain, structured patterns." Jake nodded. "Respond with the next sequence. Show we understand." The reply was sent. Then another came. And another. Soon both sides were engaged in a silent conversation of numbers, each sequence growing more complex. Krikstaal felt a flicker of surprise. They were learning fast. Too fast. "Open communication channel," he commanded. For the first time in history, 2 civilizations spoke. "We are the Zephirian people," came the translated message. "We come in peace." Jake took a slow breath. "Welcome, we are humans of Earth. We also come in peace." Hours passed as the dialogue continued. Questions were exchanged carefully. Technology, culture, history. Each side revealed only fragments, testing the other. But Krikstaal began noticing inconsistencies. The human ship's power output was unusually high. Their communication systems were more refined than expected. And when asked about their advancements, the humans avoided direct answers. That was not normal. By the time Dr. Lisa Grant arrived at Luna Base and took control of the communication effort, The tone had subtly shifted. She remained composed, analytical, but she too noticed something strange. The alien seemed uneasy. "We would like to invite you to visit our world," she said. "There is much we can learn from one another." Krikstaal agreed, but internally doubt was growing. This was not how first contact usually went. These humans were not behaving like a young species. They weren't amazed. They weren't intimidated. They were equal. Later, alone in his chamber, Krikstaal sent a coded transmission to the Galactic Council. "Species more advanced than initial assessment. Recommend caution." The reply came quickly. "Continue standard integration protocol." But Krikstaal knew something was wrong, and for the first time in his career, he felt uncertain. The welcome on Earth was carefully prepared, but beneath the formal smiles, tension quietly grew. Ambassador Helen Carter stood at the reception hall as the alien delegation arrived. Her posture was confident, her voice warm, but her eyes missed nothing. The visitors observed everything with unusual intensity: the architecture, the technology, even the smallest details. "We are honored by your presence," she said. Commander Krikstaal gave a respectful nod. "We come to welcome your species into the wider galactic community. There is much we can teach you." That single word, teach, lingered in the air longer than expected. Helen noticed it immediately. This wasn't just an offer, it sounded like an assumption. The first round of discussion went smoothly on the surface. The Zephirians spoke about unity, peace, and a vast alliance known as the Confederation. Thousands of species living together under a shared system: order, stability, and guidance. But to some, it sounded less like cooperation and more like control. At a secure observation center, Colonel Steve Parker monitored everything closely. "Something feels off," he muttered. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, now assisting as translator, nodded slightly. "They keep using terms that translate to unexpected and concerning when referring to our systems." Concerned, Steve frowned. "About what?" "Our defenses." That answer didn't sit well. Meanwhile, Dr. Kevin Walsh sat across from Krikstaal during a deeper discussion. "You mentioned over 3,000 species," Walsh said. "How exactly does this confederation function?" Krikstaal answered with pride. "We guide developing civilizations. We ensure stability. It is our responsibility to protect and educate." Walsh gave a polite nod, but internally something clicked. That wasn't guidance. That was control. Back in the intelligence division, new data began coming in, and it raised more questions than answers. "Sir," said Lieutenant Julie Hayes, "we've analyzed their ships." Steve looked up and, "They're bigger than ours, but not better. Their weapon systems are actually less advanced." Steve froze for a moment. "That makes no sense." Julie hesitated. "Unless they've never had a reason to improve them." The implication hit hard. A civilization that had never faced real resistance. On Luna Base, things escalated. A new arrival changed the tone entirely. A much larger fleet entered orbit, 12 massive ships positioning themselves around the moon. This was no longer just a visit. It was a statement. Council Speaker Threndek emerged from the lead vessel, larger, more imposing, surrounded by armed guards. "We are here to finalize humanity's integration," he announced. Helen Carter kept her composure. "Humanity values independence," she replied carefully. "We prefer partnership over integration." Threndek's expression hardened. "Independence is not an option for developing species. The galaxy is dangerous. You require our protection." The room went silent. That was no longer diplomacy. It was pressure. While negotiations continued, something unexpected began happening during the cultural exchanges. Dr. Chris Johnson guided the aliens through a medical facility. "This is our nanomedical lab," he explained. "We repair cellular damage at the molecular level." The alien stopped, completely still. "Nanotechnology," one whispered. "That knowledge was lost centuries ago." Chris blinked. "We developed it about 5 years ago." The reaction was immediate, quiet panic. Elsewhere, engineer Maria Lopez demonstrated a fusion reactor. "Current efficiency is 93%, she said proudly. The lead alien scientist looked stunned. "That is impossible. Our best systems barely reach 70%. Maria shrugged casually. "We improved magnetic containment. Once we understood the math, it wasn't too difficult." The alien didn't respond. He just stared. At a formal dinner later that evening, the situation grew even more uncomfortable. General Frank Williams spoke openly. "Earth's population is around 8 billion, he said. The alien delegation went silent again. 8 billion, Threndak repeated slowly. "And we've established colonies across 12 star systems." This time, the silence felt heavier. "Since when?" Krikstaal asked quietly. "About 30 years ago," Frank replied. The expressions on the alien faces shifted, from curiosity to fear. That fear only deepened during further discussions. Terraforming projects, advanced shields, rapid expansion. Every detail contradicted what they believed about young species. But the real turning point came from an unexpected place. Archaeology. Dr. Ryan Foster had been reviewing ancient star maps and settlement patterns. Something didn't add up. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the data. "We've found traces of human presence on 17 different worlds, all within Confederation space." His assistant shook her head. "That's impossible." Ryan didn't look away from the screen. "No, it is." The evidence was clear. Humans had been there. Thousands of years ago. Within hours, the information reached high command. Admiral Bennett contacted global leadership immediately. "We need to reconsider everything," he said. "This situation is not what we thought." At the same time, panic spread among the alien delegation. Threndak sent an urgent transmission. "Humans possess technologies we lost long ago. Their expansion rate is unprecedented. Evidence suggests prior galactic presence." The reply from their leadership came quickly and coldly. "Initiate containment protocols. This species must be controlled." But there was a problem. It was already too late. Humanity was too advanced, too widespread, and far too independent. That night, both sides reached the same conclusion. This was not a simple first contact. This was something much bigger. The visitors had expected to guide a primitive world. Instead, they had discovered something they did not understand. Something that might already be stronger than them. The tension was no longer hidden. What had begun as peaceful contact was now quietly shifting towards something far more dangerous. On the Confederation's capital world, Nexus Prime, an emergency council had been called. Hundreds of representatives filled the massive chamber, their voices overlapping in concern and confusion. "The humans," High Counselor Vextara announced, her voice cutting through the noise, "are no longer to be considered a developing species." Silence slowly replaced the chatter. "They possess technology comparable to ours. Their expansion is unnatural, and most concerning of all, they refuse integration." The word refuse echoed heavily. For thousands of years, no species had ever done that. Back on Earth, the conclusions were just as serious, but from a different angle. Director Sam Mitchell stood before the Global Leadership Council. The Confederation isn't what they claim, he said firmly. They don't guide civilizations, they suppress them. President Laura Davis leaned forward. Explain. They limit technological growth, control populations, and eliminate military independence. It's not cooperation, it's quiet domination. The room fell silent. And they expected us to accept that, she asked. Sam nodded. Yes, but we didn't follow their script. Hidden deep within a secure facility, Agent Julie Hayes monitored intercepted alien transmissions. Her team had quietly broken their encryption days ago. Now the truth was impossible to ignore. They're calling us an apex species and a destabilizing force, she reported. Her supervisor frowned, meaning. They're afraid, Julie replied. They think we're something dangerous. Back on Luna Base, a demonstration was arranged, officially labeled as a cultural exchange. In reality, it was a test. The aliens wanted to remind humanity of their superiority. Commander Tony Baker observed as the Zephirian weapon system was prepared. This is one of our most advanced plasma cannons, Threndak announced, capable of destroying small celestial bodies. The weapon fired. A distant target was instantly vaporized. The alien delegation watched proudly. Tony nodded politely, impressive. Then he added, "Would you like to see one of our defensive systems?" Moments later, a human shield generator activated. The alien weapon fired again, this time directly at the shield. The plasma wave struck and vanished, completely absorbed. No damage, no reaction, nothing. The silence that followed was different. Heavier. What is this? Threndak whispered. Tony gave a calm response. Energy absorption field. We've had it operational for about a decade. The balance had shifted, and everyone in the room felt it. Shortly after, another alarming discovery surfaced. Dr. Alex Green, working late in his lab, had been studying ancient artifacts recovered from multiple star systems. Something in the translation caught his attention. "This can't be right," he murmured. He ran the data again. Same result. These records, they're not alien. He immediately contacted his colleague, Dr. Sarah Kim. When she arrived, he showed her everything. "These artifacts belong to a human civilization," he said slowly. "One that ruled the galaxy 12,000 years ago." Sarah stared at him. "If that's true, then we're not newcomers." Alex nodded. "We're returning." The implications were staggering. Ancient human settlements scattered across known space. Technology far beyond anything currently understood. And no recorded memory of it. Excavation intensified across the solar system. On Luna, Mars, and distant asteroids, hidden facilities were uncovered. Inside them, machines that still functioned. Waiting. Dr. Peter Clark led one of the excavation teams beneath the lunar surface. "The structure is over 12,000 years old," his assistant reported, "but it's still active." Peter stepped closer to a control panel. As his hand touched it, the system came alive instantly, as if it recognized him. "It's responding to us," he whispered. "Not just to humans, but specifically to us." Meanwhile, on Mars, another discovery pushed things even further. Professor Linda S.H. analyzed human DNA samples. What she found was impossible to ignore. "Every human carries dormant genetic markers," she said. Her colleague looked confused. "Markers for what?" Linda didn't hesitate. "Enhancements." The changes had already begun. Personnel exposed to ancient systems started experiencing differences. Faster reflexes, sharper perception, instinctive understanding, of advanced technology. Sergeant Joe Martinez described it simply. It feels like everything slowed down, except me. The truth was becoming undeniable. Humans weren't evolving. They were remembering. Across the galaxy, ancient systems activated. Forgotten worlds lit up. Defense grids powered on. Energy shields appeared around planets that had been silent for millennia. The past was waking up. The Confederation watched all of this unfold with growing fear. This is not evolution, Vextara stated during an emergency session. This is restoration. Some leaders refused to believe it. Others understood immediately. They were not facing a rising species. They were facing a returning one. Then came the decision. A dangerous one. Fleet mobilization began under the cover of routine operations. But the intent was clear. Containment. If necessary, elimination. On Earth, the warning came through intercepted signals. They're preparing for conflict, Agent Hayes reported. Admiral Kate Sullivan didn't hesitate. All units activate full defense protocols. Hidden fleets moved into position. Systems that had never been revealed were brought online. Humanity had been preparing too. Just in case. As both sides braced for what came next, one final discovery changed everything. Dr. Matt Turner uncovered the full truth hidden in the ancient records. The Empire didn't collapse, he explained. It chose to disappear. Thousands of years ago, ancient humanity had reached the peak of power. They controlled the galaxy. Nothing could challenge them. And that became the problem. They realized they were becoming stagnant, Matt continued. Too powerful, too comfortable. So they made a choice. To step away. They shut down their empire. Scattered their people. Erased their own legacy. Not out of weakness, but to start again. To rediscover growth. To rebuild identity. To become human again. And now, that cycle was ending. The galaxy believed it was meeting a new species. But the truth was far more unsettling. Humanity was not new. They were the original rulers. And they were waking up. The moment the Confederation fleets crossed into attack formation, everything changed. What they expected to be a quick operation turned into something they could never have imagined. Multiple fleets entering the system, reported Captain Sandra Lee from command. They're surrounding the outer defenses. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood firm. All units, she ordered calmly, initiate full activation, no more holding back. For years, humanity had kept certain capabilities hidden. Now there was no reason to. Across the solar system, dormant systems came online. Ships that had never been revealed emerged from hidden docks. They weren't like the vessels the aliens had seen before. These were faster, stronger, and built with technologies that felt almost ancient. The Confederation launched the first strike. Energy blasts surged toward human defenses. But instead of destruction, they were stopped. Effortlessly. Massive shields formed around key positions, absorbing the attacks without strain. Then something even more shocking happened. Across distant star systems, ancient defense networks activated simultaneously. Planets long considered abandoned, lit up with protective barriers. Automated fleets awakened. And every system responded to one thing. Human presence. Commander Greg Davis, stationed on a frontier colony, stared at the readings in disbelief. These systems, they're not just defending us, he said quietly. They're recognizing us. Back near Earth, the Confederation fleets prepared for a final push. High Counselor Vextara personally commanded the assault. All ships, she ordered, target the human homeworld. End this now. But before they could fire, space itself seemed to shift. A massive object emerged from deep space. Not a fleet, a single ship. It dwarfed everything around it, larger than entire battle formations. Ancient, silent, powerful. Admiral Sullivan watched in stunned silence. "What is that?" The answer came moments later. "It's one of ours," a technician whispered. The ancient human capital ship had returned, after 12,000 years, and it moved into position between Earth and the attacking fleets. The Confederation fired everything they had. Their most powerful weapons struck the ship's defenses and disappeared, like they never existed. Then the ancient vessel responded, not with destruction, but with precision. A single pulse of energy expanded outward. Within seconds, every Confederation ship went dark. Weapons offline, engines disabled, complete shutdown. No explosions, no casualties, just silence. It wasn't a battle. It was a message. High Counselor Vixtara stared at the powerless fleet around her. "We misunderstood," she said quietly. But the truth was even deeper than that. They hadn't just misunderstood humanity. They had underestimated history itself. On Earth, the realization spread quickly. Humanity had not just defended itself. It had revealed something far greater. Dr. Matt Turner summarized it best. "We didn't build all of this from nothing. We inherited it." The ancient empire had never truly vanished. It had been waiting. And now it had awakened. Days later, a new gathering took place. Not as conquerors, but as equals. President Laura Davis stood aboard the ancient capital ship, now fully active and under human control. The same vessel that had once overseen an entire galaxy. Now it represented something new. The system recognizes you as leader, the onboard intelligence explained through its interface. But leadership does not mean control. Laura looked out at the stars before responding. "Then we won't control," she said firmly. "We'll guide differently." Representatives from countless species gathered. This time not under pressure, not under fear, but by choice. High Counselor Vixtara stepped forward, no longer as a ruler, but as a participant. "The Confederation system has failed," she admitted. "We accept a new path." But Laura shook her head slightly. "There won't be another empire," she said. "No more forced guidance, no more control. The galaxy belongs to everyone." A new agreement was formed, not based on dominance, but on cooperation. Species that had lived under control for centuries began to experience something unfamiliar. Freedom, choice, growth. Humanity didn't take control of the galaxy. They changed it. Ancient technologies were repurposed. Weapons became tools for protection. Hidden systems became centers of knowledge. Worlds that had suffered were restored. Mixed crews began exploring space together. Scientists from different species worked side by side. Cultures that had once been suppressed were finally allowed to flourish. And the most important change of all, first contact with new civilizations would never again involve control. Only respect. Dr. Lisa Grant summarized the new philosophy simply. Power isn't about ruling others. It's about lifting everyone together. The galaxy slowly transformed, not through force, but through understanding. The truth of humanity's past was no longer hidden. They had once ruled everything. Then they chose to walk away. And now they had returned, not as conquerors, but as something better. The age of control had ended. The age of balance had begun. and for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy truly belonged to all who lived in it.